They say the husband is always the last to know. I used to think it was just a cliché, something people said to either make a point or soften the blow of bad news. But now, sitting at the breakfast table with Lily across from me, I was living the reality of that statement. And you know what? It's not the knowing that gets you. It's the delivery. It's the casual, almost flippant way it was served to me, right alongside scrambled eggs and toast. Yesterday, my boss invited me to lunch, she began. She had that neutral tone in her voice, the one she used when she was trying to make something sound unimportant. We ended up in a hotel room and spent most of the day there. I loved it, and I'll probably do it again. I froze, coffee cup halfway to my mouth. The steam rose lazily, as if mocking my inability to process what I'd just heard. Did I hear her right? I mean, surely this was some kind of joke, right? But no. She just sat there, completely composed, stirring her tea like she'd just commented on the weather. The storm clouds were in me now, raging, colliding, and demanding answers. What? I finally managed to say. My voice cracked, betraying me. My hands were trembling, so I put the cup down before I spilled it all over myself. She looked up at me then, as if finally realizing the bomb she'd dropped. Or maybe just curious to see how I'd react. I thought you should know, she said simply, as if her transparency made her a saint. My mind raced. I couldn't decide if I should scream, cry, or laugh. All I could do was stare at her, the woman I'd shared my life with for 24 years, and wonder how she could say something so destructive so casually. Why? I asked, my voice sharper this time. Why would you tell me this? Why would you even do this? Lily set her spoon down, folding her hands neatly on the table. I didn't plan it, she said. It just happened. And I told you because I wanted to be honest. You deserve that. Honest? The word escaped me like a bullet. You call this honesty? Telling me you cheated on me, that you'll probably do it again? And what, I'm supposed to thank you for your integrity? Her calm facade cracked just a little then. I saw her eyes flicker with something. Guilt, perhaps, or fear. I didn't know how else to tell you, she admitted softly. I needed you to know. I laughed then, but it was bitter, humorless. Needed me to know? Needed me to know what, exactly? That our marriage means so little to you? That I'm not enough for you? That you can toss 24 years down the drain and shrug about it over breakfast? She winced, and for a second, I thought she might cry. But no, Lily was nothing if not composed. It's not like that, Jack, she said. I still love you. Love? I spat the word out like it was poison. You call this love? Because it doesn't feel like love to me. It feels like betrayal. I stood up then, unable to sit there another moment. My appetite was gone, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I can't do this, I said, shaking my head. I need to think. Take all the time you need, she said quietly. I'll give you space. I left the room without another word, my coffee forgotten, my world shattered. As I climbed the stairs to get ready for work, her voice followed me, soft but resolute. I'm sorry, Jack. I truly am. Sorry? I thought bitterly. Sorry doesn't even begin to cover it. I spent the rest of the morning trying to piece myself back together. Every step I took, every move I made felt mechanical, like I was a robot running on pre-programmed routines. Shower, shave, dress, tie my shoes. The mirror in the bathroom was my enemy. Every time I caught a glimpse of myself, I saw a man who had just been stripped of something vital, his pride, his trust, his very identity as a husband. Iris? No, Lily. I couldn't even think of her by her name without feeling my blood boil. Was still downstairs. The clink of dishes and running water floated up to me as if this were just another normal day in our house. How could she act so calm? How could she move around like she hadn't just dropped a bomb on our lives? The audacity of it all made me feel sick. When I finally came back down, I avoided the kitchen altogether. Instead, I grabbed my briefcase and headed straight for the door. "Jack," she called out, her voice steady but softer than usual. "We need to talk." I stopped but didn't turn around. "Talk?" I said, the word tasting bitter. "What is there to talk about, Lily? You cheated on me, and you plan to do it again. That's pretty much the whole story, isn't it?" There was a pause. Maybe she thought I'd turn around. Maybe she thought I'd give her the chance to explain herself again. But I didn't. I opened the door and stepped out into the world, leaving her silence behind me. Work was no better. The office felt like a cage, and my desk was the only corner of the world where I could pretend, even for a moment, that my life wasn't unraveling. But the pretending didn't last. Every email I answered, every phone call I took felt trivial. How could any of it matter when my marriage was crumbling before my eyes? By the time lunch rolled around, I couldn't stand it anymore. I left my desk and wandered the streets near my office, hoping the cold air would somehow clear my head. Instead, it made me feel lonelier. Every couple I saw walking by, holding hands or laughing together, was like a slap in the face. Was that us once? Was that what we'd lost? When I finally made it home that evening, I was emotionally drained. The house was quiet, and for a brief moment, I thought Lily had left. A wave of relief and something resembling sadness washed over me. But then I heard the sound of a chair moving in the dining room. She was sitting at the table, a glass of wine in front of her, her face a strange mix of determination and remorse. "I made dinner," she said as I walked in. "It's in the oven." I ignored her, heading straight for the living room. I wasn't hungry, and even if I were, I couldn't imagine sitting across from her, pretending things were normal. Instead, I turned on the TV and let the noise drown out my thoughts. But she wasn't going to let me off the hook so easily. "Jack," she said, standing in the doorway. "I meant what I said this morning. I need to give you space, but I also need to know where we stand." I muted the TV and looked at her, my face expressionless. "Where we stand," I repeated. "We don't stand anywhere, Lily. You've destroyed everything." She flinched but didn't look away. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said quietly. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I still love you." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "You keep saying that, but love doesn't feel like this, Lily. Love doesn't break people." There was a long pause. For a moment, I thought she might cry, but instead, she straightened her shoulders and nodded. "I'll move into the guest room," she said softly, "if that's what you want." "It is," I said. "And not because I need space, because I can't share a bed with someone I can't trust." Her lips trembled, but she didn't argue. She just turned and walked away. And as I watched her disappear down the hall, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. I'd drawn a line in the sand, but I couldn't help wondering if I'd already lost the battle. The next morning, I woke up with a weight on my chest that felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the audacity, the casualness of her confession. She'd told me about her affair with the same tone she'd used to remind me to take out the trash. That thought alone drove me to my breaking point. I couldn't let it go. Not yet. Not without confronting the man she cheated with. I wanted to hear it from him, see his face, and make him squirm under the weight of what he'd done. Tony Harrow. Her boss. The name replayed in my mind like a bad song stuck on repeat. It was time to make it personal. By 9 a.m., I was sitting at my desk at work, phone in hand. My fingers hovered over the keypad as I debated whether to call his office. My heart pounded, and my mind raced with what I'd say. Would I yell? Threaten? Demand answers? None of it would fix what had already happened. But I needed to do something, anything, to reclaim even a sliver of control. When his secretary picked up, I asked for him by name, keeping my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. A few moments later, the man himself came on the line. "This is Tony," he said, his tone smooth and professional, completely unaware of what was coming. "This is Jack," I said, my voice cold and clipped. "Lily's husband." There was a pause, a long one. I could almost hear the wheels turning in his head as he realized who I was and why I was calling. Jack?" he said finally, his voice suddenly less confident. "What can I do for you?" I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Lily told me everything," I said. "About the hotel, about you. I just thought you should know that I'm kicking her out, and she's all yours now." "Listen, Jack," he started, but I cut him off. "No, you listen," I snapped. "I'm pissed, and you better start watching your back. Make sure your health insurance is up to date because you're going to need it." Before he could respond, I hung up the phone, slamming the receiver down with more force than necessary. My hands were shaking and my pulse was racing. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a small, fleeting sense of satisfaction. Later that afternoon, I met with my lawyer. I needed to know my options, what I could do, legally and otherwise, to make sure Tony paid for what he'd done. My lawyer, a sharp but soft-spoken man named Patrick, listened carefully as I explained the situation. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Unfortunately, Jack, in our state, no one can be blamed for anything in a divorce," he said. "That means property will be divided equally, regardless of who did what." I clenched my jaw, frustration bubbling to the surface. "What about suing Tony? Alienation of affection or something like that?" Patrick nodded slowly. "That's an option, but it's tricky. You'd need solid evidence, texts, emails, or something concrete tying him to the affair. Otherwise, it's just hearsay and he could deny everything." Of course, I didn't have evidence. All I had was Lily's confession, and as much as I hated to admit it, that wasn't enough. Patrick offered one other possibility: suing Tony's company if they had a policy against relationships between employees. But that felt wrong. Why should his employer take the fall for what he and Lily had done? In the end, I told Patrick to proceed with the divorce papers and to file a lawsuit directly against Tony. I didn't care if it was a long shot. I wanted him to feel the consequences of his actions, even if it was just a dent in his bank account. When I got home that evening, Lily was waiting for me in the living room. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept, and her eyes were red as if she'd been crying. "You called him, didn't you?" she said, her voice trembling. "I did," I replied evenly. "And I told him he could have you." Her face crumpled at that, but I felt no sympathy. "Jack, please," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Don't do this. Don't let him ruin everything." "He didn't ruin anything, Lily," I shot back. "You did. You ruined us." I left her sitting there, broken and sobbing, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. Not yet. The fallout from Lily's betrayal rippled far beyond just the two of us. As much as I wanted to keep our crumbling marriage a private matter, I knew that wasn't realistic. Our kids, Sarah and Daniel, had to know. Our families, too. It wasn't about revenge or airing dirty laundry. It was about setting the record straight. I needed everyone to understand one thing. I wasn't the one who destroyed this marriage. Telling Sarah and Daniel was harder than I expected. I started with Sarah. She was our firstborn, the one who inherited Lily's sharp wit and my stubbornness. I called her that evening after work, pacing the length of my office like a caged animal. "Hey, Dad," she answered cheerfully. Her voice was like a knife to my chest, so full of life and completely oblivious to the storm about to hit. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "Do you have a minute to talk? It's important." Her tone shifted immediately. "What's wrong? Are you okay? Is Mom okay?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "We're fine, physically, but things aren't okay between your mom and me." "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. I paused, trying to find the right words. "Your mother and I are getting a divorce." There was silence on the other end, followed by a sharp intake of breath. What? Why? You and Mom have been together forever. I swallowed hard. I don't want to get into all the details right now, but it wasn't my decision. Let's just say your mom made a mistake, a big one, and I can't move past it. What kind of mistake? She pressed. Sarah was never one to let things go easily. A personal one, I said firmly. That's all you need to know for now. She was quiet for a moment before saying, I don't know what to say, Dad. I mean, you and Mom always seemed so solid. Sometimes things aren't what they seem, sweetheart, I replied softly. The conversation with Daniel wasn't much different. He was our youngest, a recent college graduate who still carried the carefree optimism of youth. When I told him, his first reaction was disbelief. Dad, come on, he said. You and Mom? That doesn't make any sense. You've been married forever. 24 years, I said, the number tasting bitter in my mouth. But that doesn't matter anymore. Not after what she did. Like Sarah, he pushed for details, but I kept things vague. I wasn't ready to unload everything on them. They didn't need to know the full extent of Lily's betrayal, not yet, anyway. For now, it was enough that they understood the marriage was over. Telling the extended family was a different kind of ordeal. Lily, to her credit, took the initiative. She called her parents first, then mine, admitting that the divorce was her fault without delving into specifics. By the time I spoke with them, they already knew enough to tread carefully. My mother, ever the peacemaker, called me late one evening. Jack, she began, her voice soft. Are you sure this is what you want? Yes, Mom, I said, my tone firmer than I intended. It's not just what I want. It's what has to happen. But can't you forgive her? She asked gently. People make mistakes, Jack. Maybe she didn't just make a mistake, I interrupted. She made a choice, a deliberate, selfish choice that destroyed everything we built together. I can't forgive that. Mom was quiet for a moment. I just hate to see you throw away so many years together. She's the one who threw it away, I said. Not me. As the days passed, word of the divorce spread through our circles. Friends and acquaintances offered their condolences, their sympathy, their shock. But beneath it all, I could sense the unspoken questions, the whispers behind closed doors. What really happened? Who was to blame? Was it really all Lily's fault? That's when I made a decision. If people were going to talk, they were going to talk about the truth. I wasn't going to let Lily spin this into something it wasn't. I called Sarah and Daniel again, this time giving them the bare bones facts. Your mom cheated? I said bluntly. With her boss, she admitted it to me and said she'd probably do it again. That's why we're getting divorced. Both of them were stunned into silence. When Sarah finally spoke, her voice was shaking. I don't even know what to say, Dad. You don't have to say anything, I replied. I just wanted you to hear it from me, not from someone else. Thanks for telling us, Daniel said quietly. I'm sorry, Dad. I can't believe she'd do something like that. By the end of the week, the truth was out. Lily and I had both played our parts in breaking the news to those closest to us, and while it didn't make the pain any easier, it brought a strange sense of closure. The marriage was over. That much was clear. What came next was anyone's guess. The offer to move to Seattle came at exactly the right time, if there's ever a right time to escape the wreckage of your life. Barney, my boss, called me into his office one morning and hit me with the news. O'Brien was retiring, and they needed someone to take over at the Seattle branch. Someone capable. Someone reliable. Someone like me. At first, I thought he was joking. Me? Relocate? In the middle of this mess? But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Seattle was a clean slate, thousands of miles away from Lily, from the memories, from the pitying looks of friends and family. It was the perfect way to leave everything behind and start fresh. I accepted the job before I even left his office. When I told Sarah about the move, she was thrilled. "That's amazing, Dad. You'll be closer to me and Alan," she said, her voice brimming with excitement. "I was hoping you'd say that," I replied, relieved. "Because I'll need a place to stay for a while, just until I find my own apartment." She laughed. "Of course. You're more than welcome to stay with us. Alan will love having you around." Her enthusiasm was contagious, but part of me couldn't shake the guilt. I wasn't just moving for the job, I was running. Running from Lily, from the wreckage of our marriage, from the bitterness that had taken root inside me. But if running gave me the chance to rebuild, maybe it wasn't such a bad thing. The next few weeks were a blur of packing, paperwork, and farewells. I spent my days tying up loose ends at work and my evenings sorting through 24 years' worth of memories. Every photo, every memento, every piece of furniture seemed to tell a story, most of them happy ones. But the happiness felt hollow now, tainted by betrayal. I decided to leave most of it behind. The house was already on the market, and I saw no point in dragging the past to Seattle. I packed the essentials, clothes, a few books, my laptop, and left the rest for Lily to deal with. On my last night in town, the office threw me a going-away party at a local bar. It was a low-key affair, filled with cheap beer, warm laughs, and the kind of camaraderie that only comes from shared misery on tight deadlines. For a few hours, I almost felt normal again. The drive to Seattle was long and lonely. I had plenty of time to think, which wasn't necessarily a good thing. My mind kept drifting back to Lily, to the moment she'd told me about the affair, to the look on her face when I told her it was over. Was I making the right choice? Could we have salvaged something from the wreckage? No, I told myself firmly. There was nothing left to save. Trust was the foundation of any marriage, and ours had been obliterated. By the time I reached Sarah's house, I was exhausted, physically and emotionally. She came out to greet me as I pulled into the driveway, her smile wide and welcoming. "Dad!" she exclaimed, throwing her arms around me. "Welcome to Seattle." Her warmth was a balm for my battered soul. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. Living with Sarah and Alan was an adjustment, but not an unpleasant one. Their home was cozy and filled with the kind of love and laughter I'd been missing for so long. Sarah went out of her way to make me feel welcome, and Alan, though a bit reserved, treated me with genuine respect. It didn't take long for Sarah to start playing matchmaker. "You should come out with us this weekend," she said one evening over dinner. "There's a great live music spot downtown. You'll love it." "Thanks, but I'm not really in the mood for crowds," I replied. She gave me a knowing look. "Dad, you can't hide forever. It's just a night out, no pressure." Against my better judgment, I agreed. The place was called The Grotto, a trendy little lounge with a live band and a dance floor. As we walked in, I felt completely out of place. The crowd was younger, hipper, and far more carefree than I could ever hope to be. But Sarah was determined to drag me out of my shell. She introduced me to a few of her friends, one of whom, a brunette named Emily, seemed particularly interested in me. I wasn't sure how to feel about that. On one hand, it was flattering. On the other, it felt wrong. I wasn't ready to move on. Not yet. Over the next few weeks, Emily and I started seeing each other casually. She was fun, lighthearted, and exactly what I needed to distract myself from the pain of the divorce. But it was clear from the start that we were just two people passing time together. There was no depth, no connection. And when she got a promotion that required her to move to another city, neither of us were particularly heartbroken. I was back to square one, single, lonely, and trying to rebuild my life one day at a time. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving in the right direction. After Emily left, I thought I'd retreat into my work, maybe focus on settling into Seattle and leave relationships for another day, or another decade. But life had other plans. Her name was Claire, and she came out of nowhere, like a sudden rainstorm on a sunny afternoon. I met Claire at the grotto. Sarah had dragged me there again, insisting I needed a night out. I wasn't thrilled about it. The place reminded me too much of Emily and the awkward dance of starting over. But as I sat nursing a drink at the bar, trying to blend into the wallpaper, Claire walked in. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't trying to draw attention. But something about her caught my eye. The quiet confidence, the way she moved through the room like she belonged without needing anyone's approval. Sarah noticed me noticing. "Go talk to her," she said, nudging me. I shook my head. Number not happening. Sarah rolled her eyes. "Dad, she's literally standing right there. What's the worst that could happen?" I didn't answer, but Sarah didn't need me to. She waved Claire over before I could stop her. "This is my dad, Jack," she said brightly. "He's new in town." Claire smiled, and just like that, I was pulled into a conversation I hadn't planned for but didn't entirely hate. She was charming, intelligent, and had a sharp sense of humor that caught me off guard more than once. By the end of the night, we'd exchanged numbers, and against my better judgment, I found myself looking forward to seeing her again. Claire and I started seeing each other casually, grabbing coffee or dinner when our schedules aligned. She had a job in marketing and a wit that could cut through even the heaviest of my moods. For the first time since Lily's betrayal, I felt a spark of something. Hope, maybe. Or at least the possibility of moving on. But things with Claire weren't as simple as they seemed. About a month into whatever it was we were doing, I started noticing little inconsistencies. She was always vague about her schedule, disappearing for days at a time without explanation. When I asked her about it, she'd shrug it off, saying she had work commitments or family stuff. Then one Friday night at the grotto, the truth walked right up to me in the form of a man who looked like he wanted to kill me. "Are you Jack?" he asked, his tone sharp. I nodded, confused. "Yeah, who's asking?" "I'm Tom," he said, "Claire's husband." The words hit me like a freight train. Husband. Claire never mentioned being married. She didn't wear a ring. She never gave any indication that she wasn't single. I stared at Tom, trying to process what he'd just said. "I didn't know," I managed to say, my voice weak. "She never told me." Tom looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. "Yeah, she's good at that. Look, I don't want to fight you. I just want you to know the truth. She's been doing this for years, sneaking around, lying to me. I don't know why I'm still with her, but I am." I didn't know what to say. What could I say? I'd been blindsided, caught in a lie I didn't even know I was part of. That night, I confronted Claire. She didn't deny it. In fact, she seemed almost indifferent. "Yes, I'm married," she said with a shrug. "But it's complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You lied to me, Claire. You made me part of this mess without even giving me a choice." "I didn't lie," she said calmly. "I just didn't tell you." "That's the same thing," I snapped. "And it's not just about me. What about Tom? Does he deserve this?" She sighed, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "Tom and we're not happy. He knows that. We've been living separate lives for years. I don't see why that has to stop me from being happy." Her words made my blood boil. "So your happiness is all that matters? What about the people you hurt along the way?" Claire crossed her arms, her expression hardening. "If you're going to judge me, Jack, then maybe this isn't going to work." "You're damn right it's not going to work," I said. "I want nothing to do with this." I left her standing there, feeling both angry and foolish. How had I not seen the signs? How had I let myself get dragged into another person's web of lies? The fallout from Claire's deception lingered longer than I wanted it to. I wasn't angry at her. Not really. I was angry at myself for not asking the right questions, for letting myself believe that moving on could be simple. If Lily had taught me anything, it was that trust was fragile, I should have known better. For the next few weeks, I kept to myself, focusing on work and avoiding the grotto. I wasn't ready to dive back into the chaos of dating. Not yet. Maybe not ever. For now, all I wanted was peace, and a chance to figure out who I was without Lily, without Claire, without anyone else. And then the letter arrived. It came on a Thursday evening. I remember because it was the first piece of personal mail I'd received in weeks. My initial thought was that it might be from Sarah or Daniel, a thank you card, or a quick update. But when I saw Lily's handwriting on the envelope, my stomach clenched. I almost didn't open it. Part of me wanted to toss it in the trash and pretend it had never arrived. But curiosity, or maybe a need for closure, got the better of me. I sat down at the kitchen table, tore the envelope open, and pulled out the neatly folded sheet of paper. Her words hit me like a freight train. Jack, I know I don't have the right to ask anything of you, but I wanted to reach out one last time. I've been going to therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did and how I hurt you so deeply. The truth is, there's no excuse for my actions, and I'll regret them for the rest of my life. I still love you, Jack. I always will. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope that someday you can find peace. I wish you nothing but happiness, whether it's with someone else or on your own. You deserve that much at least. Lily. I read the letter 3 times, each word carving deeper into the armor I'd built around myself. Therapy ? Regret? Was this genuine remorse or just another attempt to manipulate me? I wanted to believe she was sincere, but trust was no longer something I could give freely, especially not to Lily. I folded the letter and set it on the table, staring at it as if it might somehow explain itself. Did she mean what she said? Did she really regret her actions? Or was this just guilt finally catching up to her? The memories came flooding back. The bombshell breakfast, her calm admission, the nights I spent staring at the ceiling, wondering where it had all gone wrong. I thought I had moved past it, but the letter stirred everything up again. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in my mind, taunting me. I still love you, Jack. Did she? Could she? Or was this just a way to absolve herself of the guilt she'd been carrying? By morning, I had no answers, only more questions. I called Sarah, hoping for some clarity. "Hey, Dad," she said, her voice bright as always. "What's up?" "I got a letter from your mom," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. There was a pause. "Oh," she said finally. "What did she say?" I summarized it for her, leaving out the parts about love and regret. "Do you think she means it?" I asked. Sarah sighed. "I think she does, Dad. Mom's been trying to figure things out. She's been going to therapy, like she said. She talks to me sometimes about how much she regrets what happened." "Does she?" I asked, my voice laced with skepticism. "Or does she regret getting caught?" "Both, maybe," Sarah admitted. "But I do think she's trying to make amends. Whether or not you want to forgive her is up to you." Forgiveness. The word felt foreign, almost laughable. Could I forgive her? Should I? What would that even look like? Forgiveness didn't mean getting back together, not for me at least. But maybe it could mean letting go of the anger that still simmered beneath the surface. I didn't respond to the letter. Not yet. I needed time to process it, to decide what, if anything, it meant for me. In the meantime, I tucked it away in a drawer, out of sight, but never fully out of mind. The letter stayed with me, though. Not physically, but in the quiet moments when I wasn't distracted by work or Sarah or the routine of daily life. It lingered like a ghost, reminding me that closure wasn't as simple as signing divorce papers and moving across the country. Forgiveness might have been possible, but trust? That was a different story. And trust, I realized, wasn't something you could rebuild with words on a page. Then Sarah, with her well-meaning but relentless determination, decided to change everything. It started with a casual text. "Come to the grotto tonight. I have a surprise for you. I should have known better than to agree. Surprises, especially from Sarah, usually came with strings attached. But I was trying to be the supportive father, so I said yes. When I walked into the grotto that evening, the band was already playing, and the place was alive with chatter and laughter. Sarah spotted me immediately and waved me over to a table. I didn't notice the second figure sitting with her until I was just a few feet away. It was Lily. My body tensed immediately, and a surge of emotions hit me like a tidal wave. Anger, confusion, disbelief. She looked different, but not in a bad way. Her hair was styled the way I used to love, and she wore a dress I hadn't seen in years. She'd dressed for this, for me. "Hi, Jack," she said softly, her voice almost drowned out by the music. I shot a look at Sarah, who was practically beaming. "What is this?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. "It's just dinner," Sarah said innocently, though her expression betrayed the mischief behind her plan. "I thought it might be nice for you two to catch up." "Sarah," I began, my voice low with warning. "This isn't your business." "It is when it affects my parents," she shot back, her confidence unwavering. "Just sit down and talk, please." I didn't want to make a scene, not here, so I reluctantly took the seat across from Lily. She looked nervous, fiddling with the edge of her napkin, but there was also something determined in her gaze. The first few minutes were awkward. We exchanged pleasantries, the kind of surface-level small talk you have with a distant acquaintance. "How's work? How's Seattle? How are the kids?" None of it mattered. Beneath the words was a tension so thick it could have choked the life out of the entire lounge. Finally, Lily broke the pretense. "Jack, I know you didn't want to see me. I know I'm probably the last person you want to sit across from right now, but thank you for giving me this chance." "I didn't give you anything," I said coldly. Sarah ambushed me. She flinched but nodded. "I know. And I'm sorry for that. But I'm here now, and there are things I need to say." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "You already said everything you needed to in your letter." "That wasn't enough," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's easy to write words on a page. It's harder to say them face to face." "Then why are you here?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. "Because I still love you," she said simply. The words hung in the air between us, raw and exposed. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Love? After everything she'd done? Was it even possible for her to feel that way? "You have a funny way of showing it," I said bitterly. She didn't flinch this time. I know I broke your trust. I know I hurt you in ways I can't ever fully repair. But I'm not here to ask for forgiveness or to fix things. I'm here because you deserve to hear the truth." "And what truth is that?" She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "That I regret what I did every single day. That I wasn't looking for an affair. I was looking for something in myself that I thought I'd lost. But I was wrong, Jack. What I was missing was never out there. It was here, with you, all along, and I threw it away." Her voice cracked on the last words, and for the first time I saw the depth of her regret. It wasn't an act, not this time. She was baring her soul, and whether I wanted to admit it or not, part of me believed her. Before I could respond, Sarah returned to the table with 2 drinks, one for herself and one for Lily. "Everything okay here?" she asked brightly, as if she hadn't just thrown a grenade into the middle of my evening. I shot her a glare, but Lily gave her a small smile. "Yes, everything's fine. Thank you, Sarah." Sarah took a seat, clearly pleased with herself. "Good. Then I'll leave you two to it." "No," I said firmly. "We're done here." "Jack," Lily began, but I cut her off. "No," I repeated. "This was a mistake. Whatever you came here hoping for, it's not going to happen." I stood up, tossing some cash on the table to cover the drinks. "Enjoy your evening," I said, walking away without looking back. But as I left the grotto, my mind raced. Her words, her expression, the raw honesty in her voice, they all lingered, gnawing at the walls I'd built around myself. Was she being sincere? Could I believe her? Or was this just another chapter in a story I didn't want to be part of anymore? I didn't have answers, only more questions. And for the first time in months, I wasn't sure I wanted to leave the past behind.